This is my new Hoyt AX2 32, and this is the bow I'm hunting with this year. Today, I'm going to show you some things I love about this bow, and I'm going to show you how I have this bow set up for my hunting season this year. I'm also going to talk about a couple of things that weren't great. These are things that I think Hoyt can fix as a part of their process when they're shipping these bows. So again, we'll talk about the good, we'll talk about the bad, and hopefully if somebody at Hoyt sees this, maybe they can take a look at these issues for the next iteration of these bows. First, let's talk about the bow itself and how I have this set up. I bought this bow bare and transferred some accessories from my previous bow, and then actually switched up my approach on some accessories, and I'm going to talk about why in a moment. This is the 32-inch, the long version of the Hoyt AX2. This is this year's bow from Hoyt, their aluminum version. I've shot both the carbon versions and the aluminum versions in the past. I've started to kind of lean towards the aluminum side. I just like the feel and the weight a little bit better than the carbons. Totally personal preference. I mean, I've got an RX-7 back here that I also love, but at the end of the day, I kind of lean back towards the aluminums. They just feel a little bit better for me and for my style. Let's talk about how this thing is set up and the specific components that I've got on this bow. So this particular bow is set up at 29.5-inch draw, 70 pounds, and I've got my let off at 80. What's really nice about these new cams is you can adjust your draw length in 1/4-inch increments, which is really nice for just fine tuning. You make minor changes to your setup and you want to fine tune your draw length, you're able to do that. Different release, etc. There's a lot of things that can change the way your draw length feels, and you're able to really get down to that 1/4-inch increment on this cam, which is really nice. It's also got 3 settings for your let off: 75%, 80, and 85%. I've gone back and forth. I've been shooting 80% let off on my previous bow, the VTM, forever. That's what felt good to me. On this one, I've also settled in on 80, but it was a close second to the 85. For me, the 85 felt really, really good. The back wall on this new bow is exceptional. It is rock solid. It is a night and day difference from the VTM. Not that the back wall on the VTM is bad, right? But I thought I had a solid back wall on that previous bow, and I picked this thing up, and it is just, boom, brick wall at the back of your draw. It feels so steady and so stable. I love it. So with that said, with that solid back wall, 80% let off, and it'd be the perfect fit for me, but 85 also felt really good. I'll tell you that 75 didn't feel half bad either. And from a pin float perspective and kind of how you feel as you're holding the shot, I did like 75. I can tell you it felt a little bit aggressive for me. And again, there's a discipline to the way you're holding your shot and the way you're pulling your shot off, and I'm sure I could get used to that. But for me, for a hunting situation, 80% was the perfect balance. I didn't want to feel like that bow was trying to jump out of my hand with any little movement, but I also didn't want to feel like I was dropping into a valley at that 85 setting. So 80 for me on this felt perfect. That's going to be completely personal preference for any of you guys. I took my favorite rest off of the VTM and brought it over to this new bow. So we're running a Hamskea Epsilon limb-driven rest. This thing is just rock solid. Absolutely love it. I have an 8-inch bar on the bottom mounting point for this bow. So you can see that here. And I've got the Go sticks. So I've had these Go sticks for a couple of years. These are the second iteration. I cannot stress enough how much better these version 2 Go sticks are than the originals that Hoyt came out with. The originals that Hoyt had, and I'll put this on the video, they had 2 carbon legs that came out in like less wide of a triangle than you see here. And they worked great. It held your bow up, but they weren't super stable. Your bow would be kind of wobbly. I had the bow tip over on a couple of occasions, even just with some heavy wind in my quiver, etc. Now, these new ones, you can quickly loosen and move them around into different positions, whether that position is going to be all the way forward, a normal standing position, or the position I like, which is kind of back a little bit. And so with an 8-inch bar in this position, you can set this like a tripod on the front of the bow, and your cam is completely off of the ground. Now, Hoyt also improved the cam, and they added this little nub with this little O-ring, so your cam never really touches the ground anyways, even if you have it in the mode that uses the cam as that third point in the tripod. But that said, I just really have come to like the bow sitting up on a tripod outside with the cam completely off the ground. It also widens the stance even more, and it just creates a really nice stable platform. Now, that'll only work if you have like a 13 or 14 inch bar in your upper setting here, and then you can use that to as the tripod with these in the back position, or it'll work with an 8-inch bar or a 6-inch bar on this bottom position. So I'll put that there, and it just sets really nice. From a sight perspective, I've talked about this in the past. This is the HHA. This is a Tetra Max RYZ, I think. Picatinny, my favorite sight. I love it. Nothing to say other than that's a solid sight, and I don't think you can beat it. The precision on these things is awesome. Won't go into detail there. This is not about the sight. Quiver. I love to run a quiver. I've been running the Hoyt stretch quiver for a few years on that VTM, and I didn't think I was going to change. I really liked it. It was solid because you had the wide stance on that quiver. You had no vibration, nothing. I broke the mold, and I am going with the tight spot. So I have got this tight spot here, quick detach quiver. One of the things I'm going to talk about in this video, and one of the reasons that I wasn't so happy with this riser design on the Hoyt is related to that original quiver. So that pushed me over the edge to buy this type spot quiver and use this as my go-to moving forward. But I'm also glad I did, because this quiver is really nice. I got a couple of other benefits that I didn't even think about or expect, but I made the change because of the issue I'm going to tell you guys about, and now I'm happy I did. Last but not least, just from a setup perspective, and this is kind of a simple thing. There's a lot of ways you can go about this. But this is the stock grip on these bows. This grip has been the same for the last couple of years. It's a fine grip. I've shot with it. I've shot without it. However, the riser on this AX2 is really nicely done, where they've really put a nice kind of comfortable edge on the riser itself, and it's nice and thin. You can really get a good feel in the bow. So I have ditched the grip altogether, and just for a little bit of comfort, you can see I've taken just some basic Wilson tennis overwrap, just to give it a little bit of stickiness, a little bit of comfort on there. But I love the way this bow feels shooting directly off the riser. I know there's a bunch of solutions. I think Bomar's got some kind of tape that you can put around. There's all kinds of different grips. For me, specifically, the Wilson over grip, you can get this at Walmart or at any sporting goods store. It's thinner than a normal grip, and it's just enough to give you a little bit of cushion, protect your hand a little bit from that cold aluminum when it's real cold out, but also to still maintain that feel on your shot that you want to have. So I've ditched the grip altogether and gone with this overwrap solution here. As far as the feel of this bow, the feel of the shot, my accuracy with this bow, it has been exceptional. It was a pointed improvement in long range, short range, feel in the back wall, ability to hold stable, all of those things. After I got some time with this bow, it was drastically better than the model from a few years ago for me. It felt amazing. The way that they've widened out the platform and everything, awesome. But again, there were a couple of things that I didn't love about this bow. So let's talk about the first thing, and this is a big one. And for those that don't have a press or a shop or easy access to a shop to fix this, this one was pretty annoying to me. And again, I think this is something that Hoyt can fix very easily as a part of their process. So there's a saying in archery: click, click, boom, right? And then I'm sure that saying goes in a couple of other areas. But the idea behind this, if you are drawing your bow and you're hearing noises, you're hearing clicks, you're hearing creaks, you're hearing groans, that is not a good sign. You typically do not want to have a bow making noises, especially on the draw. A lot of times that comes back to a bow that is out of spec drastically. Maybe a cable is rubbing. Worst case, maybe some of your mods are loose or there's something going on with your limb pockets that's causing that movement to create that noise. It's not the noise that's the problem, but the noise is the indicator that this could be a major issue. And a lot of times you'll hear about guys that, are drawing back and they've always had a little click in their bow or whatever, and all of a sudden their bow is blowing up on them because a screw has sheared off on one of their mods or something wasn't tight, and that click was indicative of, something that wasn't tuned correctly or that wasn't tight, right? Something was loose. So I used to take my bow, if you ever have something that doesn't sound right, you can hold your bow just in this position and just tap the string with an arrow like this. And usually from a mod perspective, if you have anything loose, you will hear it, it'll buzz, right? So that's an easy way to just double test. But the point is, look at your manual, understand what your torque spec is on all of your stuff, and make sure that your bow is tight. And that's something you should check often. But back to this bow. This bow was purchased brand new out of the box. I shot this, and immediately as I started shooting, it was noisy. About 75% back on the draw. Sometimes, about, midway to the rest of the draw, depending on how fast I was drawing, there was a pretty pronounced click, right? So you would pull and it would click. I could not figure out what was going on, and it was driving me crazy, right? I was rechecking all my mods, rechecking screws, checking everything over. I had this in the draw board, looking to see exactly where it was happening. And I could see at just one point when the cam was rolling over, I was getting this click. What I ended up narrowing it down to was the limb pocket itself, and specifically these big bolts that go through the limb pockets here. And I'm just gonna get you a close-up right here. So what I decided to do, I said, no, this is a brand new bow, but I've got to make sure there's not an issue here. And so I broke this thing all the way down, put it into the press, limbs off, limb pockets off, pulled those main limb pocket bolts out. And here's my problem, and here's where asking Hoyt to make a change. A brand new bow out of the box, those bolts and pockets were bone dry. There was not a drop of grease or lubricant in there. And I could see on that main bolt where dry metal on metal had rubbed and was creating that noise, but also starting to wear on that bow. So I've done a full breakdown of this in the past. I took white lithium grease, which is my kind of favorite solution for this, got everything nice and greased up, put the bow back together, and guess what? Perfectly silent, right? So again, that click was not a catastrophic click. It was dry points of contact within the limb pocket as the bow was drawing. But to me, a bow out of the box, brand new, plastic bag around it, coming out of the factory, that should be a basic manufacturing process at the Hoyt factory where they're adding some grease and they're putting this thing together. Because if they're not, these bows are bone dry and they're going to be creaky and clicky and noisy, and it's not a great thing, right? So that's the first thing. That's the first thing that I really was not super happy with. The second thing was the quiver. So let me take off this tight spot quiver. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I ended up, because of the quiver problem on this AX2, I went with the tight spot. And I'm actually kind of happy I had this issue because I really like the new quiver. But that said, Hoyt's new mounting points for their quivers are recessed on the off side of the riser. So if you can see right here, you have this opening where they've opened up a lot of material in the riser, and then the quiver attaches inside here. So on the quiver I was using, there's two mounting points, one on the bottom and one on the top. But what that means is that the post that's used, and let me just show you this on my other bow. This post right here goes through. That post goes through and connects here. And so you end up having a little quiver post like this that comes through and is bolted to the other side of this riser. And in theory, that will help you get closer to the bow with your quiver. Awesome, right? The problem is, for these Hoyt quivers to be quick detach, they have these little wing nuts. And this wing nut screws in on each of those posts and locks it in, and then it only takes a couple of screws to get it off and to slide your quiver off those posts. With the way that this is mounted, you can no longer get your quiver in close to the bow with these wing nuts, because the wing nuts hit, right? So when you're trying to put your quiver on, your wing nut hits here, and you're at the last setting on the post. So with this standard quiver that on the VTM, I could get sucked in all the way, even under the limb, like really tight in there, how I like it. On this one, I couldn't. I had to keep it outside quite a bit because the last setting on that post was the one that gave us me enough room to actually screw this shut. Without that, my wing nut, as I was trying to put on my quiver or take off my quiver, was hitting on this front part of the riser here. So that was the second issue and annoyance. It's a silly little thing, but again, with a quick a lot of times I keep my quiver on, but I also have situations, especially when I'm up in a tree or hunting with my saddle, where I take my quiver off and hang it. In those situations, I love to easily be able to get it on and off. With the same quiver on past bows, it's no big deal. You spin the wing nut and you pop it off. With this new bow, it became a nuisance. One, you couldn't get it close enough. And two, when you did want to take it off, you're trying to work your fingers around the inside of this riser to get it just right. And it seems just silly. This could be fixed by moving the position of the screw hole on the quiver, maybe to the bottom so you have more room. Again, silly thing. It annoyed me, resulting in getting a new quiver because I didn't want to deal with that little thing. That said, the quiver I am running this year is this tight spot. I think this is the Air, tight spot Air. It's got one attachment point here. I'll do a different video with a review on this, but it allows me to get the very tight to the bow, just how I like it, and also very easily on and off with just one lever. So been very, very happy with that. All right, last but not least, this is maybe a petty one, but again, so this bow, when I bought it, was incredibly quiet and incredibly smooth. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but I also know that one of the reasons are these little string dampeners that Hoyt brings to the table. They do a really good job. The speeds of the bow are still great with them on. So I do like running these little things. They kind of look like the old Matthews monkey tails, right? They're a little different. The problem is I can't get these things to stay together for more than a few days, right? So when I'm shooting, I'm typically out shooting, I don't know, 50 to 60 arrows a day. I'll go out and shoot, and I'll take a look, and all of a sudden the little tail version of this is gone. The way these actually work is this is an O-ring like this that goes inside your string, and then it has this secondary piece, this rubber kind of nub that sticks out, and it goes through that. Well, within 20, 30 shots, every time I'm losing my little nub. It's getting thrown out of the bow somewhere, don't know where it is, etc. So now I'm just running my little O-rings by themselves, and they do a pretty good job, but there's a little bit of a difference. You can feel a little difference in the buzz. You can hear a little difference in the sound of the bow just by losing that little dampening that was built into the string. So kind of a silly thing, but again, if this could be manufactured in one piece, or they could create a different approach so it wasn't in two pieces, allowing it to fly out on the shot, I think that would be a lot better situation. Anyways, I hope this is helpful. If you're looking for a new bow and you're interested in looking at a Hoyt, I can't speak highly enough about this AX2, the way it shoots, the way it feels. and I'm super happy with this setup at the end of the day, what I'll be taking into the woods. That said, you've heard my couple complaints on things that could be improved with the bow. None of them are showstoppers. This is all minor stuff, but again, something you should be aware of before you go take a look and potentially purchase this bow for yourself. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time.